Hi, my name is Bailey Moody, and I believe in miracles, signs, and wonders because through being a cancer survivor, I have been able to compete as an elite athlete and also share my story to the world and use my platform that I have been given. I was 10 years old when I found out that I had a tumor in my right leg. And we kind of so I was super active at the time. As a 10-year-old in fourth grade, I was playing all kinds of sports. Super huge tomboy, no question about that. But I was playing softball, I was playing basketball, I was doing this jump rope club at my school, and I was doing all sorts of things that could have potentially caused an injury. And so when I started feeling pain in my right knee, we attributed it to maybe a sports injury, maybe some growing pains. We never thought that it could be cancer. But the pain persisted, and I ended up, after x rays and MRIs and a biopsy, being diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a rare form of bone cancer that was in my right leg. So, the first question that I asked my parents, um, pretty much just as a 10-year-old going through my head, was can I play sports again? Can I play basketball again? Was my question. And my parents, they said, I don't know. We just got to focus on what's at hand is getting rid of this cancer. I really have no answers for you. And obviously they were scared. And I was scared, but as a 10-year-old, I don't think that you fully comprehend what cancer is. You just know that it's something that old people get or something that a grandparent had, but nothing that you really think for yourself. With osteosarcoma, a lot of times it goes unnoticed. It's hard to detect because a lot of times it's in young kids, so they think that it's some sort of injury or sports thing or growing pains. So a lot of times it'll be found when the child breaks their leg and it spreads everywhere because as soon as that tumor is disturbed, it can spread really rapidly. By the grace of God, though, my tumor hadn't spread. My cancer was, as far as we knew, in one place. And whether that stayed that way, we didn't know, but chemo had to start immediately in order to make sure that they got all the cancer because it's so unpredictable and so hard to keep track of because there can be such tiny little nodules everywhere that they really had to jump on the chemotherapy really quickly. So my protocol for chemo and surgery was 10 weeks of chemotherapy, roughly every week I would have chemotherapy. Sometimes every other week, it just depended. And then after the 10 weeks of chemo, I had a surgical removal of my tumor, and then another 20 more weeks of chemo because, as I said before, osteosarcoma can be very predictable. It can be places that you can't see, places in your lungs or in your other parts of your body. So I had to continue chemotherapy after my surgery to make sure that it was all gone. So that protocol was about 8 months long. Chemo was incredibly difficult. I think a lot of people don't understand exactly how a patient can feel with chemo because there's a lot of different types of chemo, a lot of ways to do chemo based on whatever cancer you have. Your age affects it a lot too. But I was inpatient for my chemo. I would go in, stay in the hospital for as many days as it took to get the chemo back out of my system. But I got to the point where my body would so anticipate the toxicity coming in that I would start throwing up and I would start feeling the symptoms before I even had any chemo in my body. And pretty much side effects of that would include just severe fatigue, terrible sores in my mouth. I lost so much weight. I lost all of my hair. I threw up hundreds and hundreds of times, and I just was completely miserable and exhausted and unable to do anything. And I never had radiation, but I always say to people, like, chemo or radiation, cancer is really, really hard. And there's a lot of side effects that a lot of times go unseen before and after treatment. As a 10-year-old, I really don't think that my faith was my own starting my cancer journey. I really think I was piggybacking on my parents' faith. And I didn't really have a personal relationship with Christ myself. But As I went through my journey, there are very distinct scenarios that I believe solidified my relationship with Christ in knowing that I really can't control any situation myself, and I have to be fully dependent on Him. And I think going through really tough times require you to be fully dependent on Him. And so, one really specific scenario is I was coming out of the hospital from one of my very last chemo treatments, and I just began showing stroke-like symptoms. I was completely unable to speak. I couldn't formulate words. It was like my tongue didn't know the words. And I was shaky and nervous, and my mom rushed me back in. The doctors sat me on the hospital bed. They gave me Benadryl. They were trying to figure out what was wrong. And I just remember in that time, I couldn't communicate with anybody around me, but I could communicate with God, and I could talk to Him, and I could pray to Him because my brain was thinking clearly, but my mouth couldn't move the words or say the words. And so I just remember I was praying and asking Him for protection and for comfort. And I just remember feeling this overwhelming sense of peace that I just could not explain. And I've never felt before in my life. And I still haven't ever felt like that. Um, and I just feel like at that moment, I knew that if I died right there, that I would go to heaven. And just from then on, obviously, my faith was not completely strong, and it definitely developed throughout my cancer journey. But that is a very distinct moment in my life that I remember, oh, this is a real thing. Like, this is my own faith, and I really need to take the steps in order to pursue that and pursue Jesus. 2 years after I was diagnosed, one of my best friends, Kylie Myers, began experiencing knee pain in her knee. She was in my fourth grade class when I was diagnosed. We were best friends, and she walked through my cancer journey with me. And so when she began experiencing knee pain, I said, this can't be possible. The statistics don't match up. She can't have cancer too. But she was actually diagnosed with cancer 2 years after I finished chemo, or 2 years after I was diagnosed with cancer. And she walked through pretty much the same journey that I walked through, having a tumor in her knee. And the chemo, her body didn't respond to the chemo in the way that mine did. And she ended up passing away just about a year after her diagnosis. But losing my best friend has also shaped me in the way that I am today, because I try and keep her in my story, because she's definitely a big part of it. I really, really grew in my faith when I walked with her through her journey, being on the other side of it. And Kylie is definitely someone that I keep close to me always, and she's definitely a really, really important part of who I am. I'm an incredibly hard worker, and so my thoughts throughout all of chemo was just, I want to get back to basketball. Like, I want to get back to sports. I want to be active. And so I think through that being my driving force and me trusting in the Lord and His plan for me, I knew that even if I didn't get back to sports, that this was going to be something that He used for a good thing. And my parents reassured me of that time and time again. They were like, God is using you, and you're going to be able to use this story. And so I count that as one of my driving motivations. And I would always tell myself, work hard, use this plan, but don't take a back seat to it either. Pursue Jesus, pursue Christ, pursue this story. And even though it's going to be hard, I want to do everything I can in order to be able to walk in the way that He wants me to walk in and use this. So after 10 weeks of chemotherapy, I had to choose in 3 types of surgery to remove the tumor that was just above my knee. The first option was a limb salvage, which is essentially they take pretty much all of the bones out of your leg that are affected, and they replace it with metal. So that would have a fake knee joint, a partially fake tibia, partially fake femur. And this option just wouldn't allow me the active lifestyle that I wanted. My leg would look normal on the outside, and people wouldn't necessarily know that I had cancer or that what I've gone through, but it wouldn't allow me to do anything that I wanted to do. And I really, really wanted to get back to sports. So my second option was an above the knee amputation, which just pretty much was a straight off amputation in my mid thigh. And my third option was a rotation plasty. And rotation plasty is where they take out the knee and they rotate the bottom portion of the leg, which is the middle of the calf to the bottom of the foot, and they rotate it 180 degrees and reattach it at the top of the thigh, so mid thigh. And essentially, my foot is backwards. My ankle works as a knee joint, and it looks kind of funny, but it was the option that would give me the most active lifestyle that I wanted. I wear a prosthesis on the lower portion of my leg, but it really hasn't stopped me from trying things I want to try and doing things I want to do. I have played basketball since kindergarten. It's been my most favorite thing. It was my first love. And throughout cancer, I was trying to get back to basketball. And so after my amputation, I started taking steps working towards getting back on the court, getting back with my team and playing rec league. And as I got back up on that, I think it took me about a year to really be running the way and moving the way that I wanted to. I started to play on my middle school team. I was doing great, and I started to sort of get frustrated with kind of how my friends were getting faster and I wasn't. And I was working as hard as I could, but I just wasn't the same as people with two legs. And I was working hard and I was keeping up, but it was just twice as much work for me to get down the court as some sort of able-bodied person to get down the court. So my parents actually found the sport of wheelchair basketball. And I was very hesitant at first because I didn't want to be considered a disabled athlete. I was struggling with the fact of adaptive sports. And we actually met this woman that plays for the sitting volleyball team for Team USA, and she has the same surgery as me. And she talked to me about how she was kind of hesitant to try adaptive sports at first too, but she realized that through playing adaptive sports, and they're so much fun, and they allow her to travel the world and have experiences that she would never have experienced with two legs. So I was like, okay, I guess I can try this. And I jumped in the chair, and I just remember my first practice was incredible, and it was exciting for me because I could keep up. There was a level playing field for everybody, and I just love it. Wheelchair basketball is a very different sport from able-bodied basketball in technique, in style of play. And as I just continue to get better and train harder, I realized, this is something that I really do actually want to do. So my sophomore year of high school, I actually went to a developmental camp for Team USA for the U.S. women's wheelchair basketball team. And I went kind of just trying to dip my feet in the water, get my name out there. As a 15-year-old, I wasn't expecting very much. And then the coach after the camp, he says, I really would like you to come back and try out for the team in January. And I was completely blown away, completely nervous. I was like, I'm too young for this. I don't even know what he's thinking. But I actually ended up going to tryouts in January with all of these women that had played college basketball, that had played on the team before. And I was completely terrified as a 16-year-old then. But I actually ended up making the team and traveling to Hamburg, Germany for the World Championships that August. And that was just one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So I tried out for the team again the next year and actually made the team to go to the Paralympic qualifiers in Lima, Peru. And I also made the under 25 team for that year as well, that took gold at the under 25 World Championships in Thailand. And then this past year, I tried out for the team again, and I actually made the roster for the Paralympic team that was supposed to go to Tokyo in August. Obviously, with everything that's happening in the world with COVID right now, they postponed the Olympics to next year. So I'm still training hard for that as well. But Team USA has completely changed my life. It's amazing too, because I would have never had the opportunity to play at this level of basketball with two legs. So to be able to do this is incredible. I tell them, it's hard right now, but trust in the Lord, lean on him, and it will get better. And sometimes through these hard times that we have come amazing things that wouldn't have happened without them. And like, I wouldn't have had the platform that I have today if it wasn't for my cancer journey and what I've been through. And that's kind of what I tell other people to rely on is, it will get better. You will get through this, and it could be so much better than it was before. My favorite scripture is First Thessalonians 5:16-18. It says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. This is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." I'm very, I just always try to remember to be thankful in all circumstances. That's why I love that verse, because even when things are hard, we're called to thank the Lord and praise the Lord, because really we don't deserve anything, and this life is broken and this life is hard. And when there's little blessings, that's a joy, and it's a gift from the Lord. And when it's hard, we should still be thanking and praising the Lord in anything, because he's our rock, he's our salvation.